Welcome to the Appetite for Discussion Show with your host, Brendan Crouch.
Thanks, Julius. We good? We're ready? All right, Mr. Andy Smith, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Glad to have you.
Yes. So this show tonight is about coffee. And I know there's a lot of people out there that like coffee, but then there's a lot of people out there who really like their coffee. So I want to personally thank you, sir, for bringing Sky Mountain Coffee to Statesville. Because it's not just, in my opinion, a coffee shop. It's not just a place to get coffee. You get to go do business there. You get to work from home there and drink some coffee. But you also offer up beer and wine. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Awesome.
Kind of a European type surrounding. It's
Yeah.
1890 building, 3 stories. They made the movie The Feud there, 1990 movie.
Did they
The
really?
gun scene. The building, it's something that took almost a year to renovate and get ready. We roast our own beans right here at our roastery in Statesville as well, and one of the few places throughout the Carolinas that does 83Q grade coffee, or Arabica coffee, which is a gourmet coffee, and Dietrich roasters, handcrafted Dietrich roasters. So we have a couple of 1,200-pound Dietrich roasters right up the street from here.
Man, you just said a whole lot of stuff about coffee and stuff that I have no idea what you're talking about. All right, so let's back up a quick second. So you bought the building a year or so ago?
Yeah, I came up to Statesville.
Yeah.
I live in a place called Lake Norman, and
Yeah.
I came up and
Beautiful place, by the way.
thank you. Took a look at the place, and I loved your downtown. It's a beautiful downtown.
Thank
It's a
you.
hidden secret.
It really is.
I mean, we live only 21 miles away and had no idea it existed. We knew Statesville as the exit 50 and your mall out there, and that's about all we knew.
Right.
So I came downtown, and I was really impressed. And then I came upon this building that was just beautiful. Had a beautiful mezzanine that when you walk in, you look up, it surrounds a 360 mezzanine that surrounds the bottom floor. The building's 129 years old. And there was a lady that was kind of she was a staple that for many, many years in town, Gloria.
Yeah. Gigi, right?
Gigi is
Yeah.
the name of the place. And her husband had just died, and not too long before I came in, and we talked about it, and she kind of lamented the fact that she had an opportunity years back to have sold the business, not the business, but the actual building, and I offered to buy it from her. And I think it surprised her, and I moved her across the street, and she's still there, and I went into what we budgeted to be a 10-week project, and 51 and a half weeks later, we were
So your timeline was pretty close. Really.
50 10 in Statesville was pretty close.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's a 10-week
dog
project.
years.
It went almost a year. We were about 3 or 4 days short of exactly a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was the so you budgeted for 10 weeks and it took 51 weeks. What was the hold up?
Well, I'm trying to stay positive here.
That's right, and we will.
It's
Sure.
Well, when you do a change of use, an historical building, in a town that sometimes in the county as well. I should say a lot of it's on the county. The process is not very fast.
Okay.
And
Slow.
when you do a change of use, your grandfather clauses go out the door.
Oh, okay.
So you get into a project where it should take a small amount of time. Before you know it, it goes forever, and the budget just keeps going up. But we're there now, and it's a phenomenal building.
It is a beautiful building.
It's as far as we had a lady who writes for a coffee magazine, came from San Diego about 2 months ago, and came in and spent a good hour taking photos of the building, and she said it was probably one of the nicer coffee houses she's seen in her life.
So you would imagine a lady who comes all the way from California, who works for a coffee house magazine, is taking pictures of the building in Statesville and gives that sort of a praise. That's really kind of a big deal, and something I'm sure you're proud of.
Yeah, it's
and we as a city should be proud of that.
Well, it is definitely a unique location. I mean, there's My family were were Americans, but Swiss citizens as well. So I've been to a lot of coffee houses throughout Europe, and to brag a little bit, this is one of the nicest spots you'll ever find for a coffee house. And we decided to, add the craft beer and wine for the evening as well, and it just adds not only to the choices for customers coming in, but to just for the decor of how it looks. It's not uncommon if you go to London in particular that a coffee roastery kind of morphs into a wine bar kind of pub in the evening. It's a little foreign here, and it kind of takes a few of the locals by surprise as to what to think of it, but it's relatively a normal thing in Europe.
But you're not reinventing the wheel. Actually, what you're doing is you're bringing culture to the town.
Well, I don't know if it's culture or not. It's certainly something different from what they've been used to. That's for sure.
You can call it culture,
Okay.
which is okay though. I mean, we need a little bit of different variety and just something different than what we normally have. I'm glad that you're there. I'm glad it's not a Starbucks. I'm glad it's not a Dunkin' Donuts. Although we do have those options in town, and I want to dive into that here in just a minute. But could you give us a brief history, if you know, since you have a 120 plus year old building, historical building that you're occupying here in town that you own, what were some of the businesses that were there prior to you, other than Gigi's?
There's only been two.
So you're the third?
Yeah, we had a hardware store, Montgomery
Hardware Store. Okay.
That was there for over 100 years.
What?
Yeah, and then Gloria, which is Gigi's, took over 20-some years ago, and she stayed there for a duration until I purchased it from her last year.
Andy, I don't have to tell you, buddy, but you got some pretty big shoes to fill.
Well, it's 129 years of shoes, I guess.
That's right. You can't die on us, okay?
Yeah,
we need you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of coffee. So, you bought the building. You started roasting the coffee. Or what made you decide to get in the? Because you don't have. Are you a coffee background type?
Yeah, no, I'm a biotech guy. Drug guy, legal drug.
Drugs.
So I'm still in the drug industry, theoretically, I guess.
Caffeine's a drug,
being
100%.
a drug, yeah. So, yeah, I spent most of my career up north originally in a company called GlaxoSmithKline.
Yeah, sure.
New Jersey with them, and then in Atlanta, I transferred to Atlanta, and then I went with a Silicon Valley company called Gilead Sciences, which at the time was relatively close to being a startup company, and it turned out to be, I guess, at one point, the largest biotech company in the world.
Wow.
So, yeah, but I've always, during that time, the past 20 years, I lived in Davidson, Lake Norman area, and I just flew every week.
So when you worked for these other companies, were you a salesperson or were
Well,
you?
it morphed into a few things. I got out of college, and I was an accountant, an analyst to start off. And then from there, I got into the steel industry, and I was a general manager in my mid to late 20s in a small steel company called Kurt Steel out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was in charge of the Philadelphia division. And then I ended up getting into pharmaceuticals and ended up going to South New Jersey, which was a place that I missed the food, but I missed nothing else of that area.
Right.
I'm a guy that's spent a good portion of my life in the South growing up, and I like it in the South.
What part of the South?
Well, Raleigh, Greenville, and Raleigh.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
And found myself being transferred to Atlanta, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit, so I quit a very secure company at the time and went with a startup, which in the biotech arena, you're looking at roughly 4,000 biotech companies. I think less than 30 make a profit. And
Wait a minute. Now, everybody who listen at home, let's say that again. 4,000
there's
startup
roughly
companies.
4,000. I think there's roughly 4,000 biotech companies, and I
And
think there's
30
something around 30 that make a profit. So it's a high risk venture. And when I left Glaxo, I took a pay cut of about 50%, and went there, and you take a gamble, just like you take a gamble in Statesville.
Sure.
Statesville it's not the place that you would typically think you're going to put a lot of money in a coffee house and buy a big building and do something different. So we took a gamble in Statesville as well, and hopefully that pays off the way Gilead did.
Well, and thank you for taking that gamble because it's a piece of something right now that the downtown area doesn't offer, and it's something that's unique. There's craft beers, obviously. There's places to to buy glasses of wine and bottles of wine. But I know myself personally, if I'm working from home on a day from what I do for a living, which puts food on the table, I really enjoy going to your place of business and working from there. It's a very relaxing atmosphere. It's actually a very bright and airy atmosphere. So as opposed to like driving all the way down to the office, and the staff is very polite. And what's even also important is the coffee's good. The coffee's great.
Glad you think so.
I do think so. And so what would you say is the difference? Like, what separates your coffee at Sky Mountain, say, from Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts? Like, what do you do that's different? What makes you special or unique?
Well, S&D does Dunkin' Donuts coffee. It's the largest roaster in the
I have no idea what S&D is.
S&D
Pretend I know nothing, because I don't.
S&D is the largest coffee roaster in the world. They're actually based out of Concord. They do
North Carolina?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
And he is a neighbor of mine. His house is slightly larger than mine, being around 24,000 square feet. But
you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I live in the cheap seats of the neighborhood.
I guarantee that his house smells great.
No, I believe if I have it right, I don't want to get his life story wrong, but his grandfather started the company. His father built it up, the company, and I think he recently sold it last year.
Really?
So, but the bulk of the coffee market out there is reduced to low-end Robusta coffee. It's relatively inexpensive coffee. It's what you would find at a Sheetz gas station and convenience stores. That's the bulk of the market out there.
That I'm drinking right now.
And it's generally not rated. Once you get to 1,200 meters and higher, for an example, of Arabica coffee.
When you say 1,200 meters, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what 1,200 meters of what?
Yeah, with the altitude.
Okay.
With coffee. It matters where you grow coffee. It matters the altitude of where it's grown and the soil, just like wine. And once you get into Arabica coffee, they start to grade it. They give what they call Q grades. And when you get up to 82 Q grades, they consider it gourmet coffee. And that gourmet coffee is rated a lot like wine. And so they have established the quality of the bean. Like if you have a cracked bean, you're going to get more of an acidity in your coffee. So... to have gourmet, you're not going to have cracked beans. You're going to have a high-end Arabica coffee. And then it comes down to the roasting. So you can have a very good bean and have a lousy roaster or a roasting process, and you're still going to get a poor outcome. Okay. And if you have a lousy bean with a good roaster, you're still going to get a poor outcome. We have Dietrich roasters, which are handcrafted Dietrich roasters. They're the Rolls-Royce of roasting coffee roasters. Relatively small. I mean, both of them are 1,200 pounds, but in that regard. But from
sounds pretty big,
but
man.
They're small batch roasters.
Oh, okay.
And we have it right here in Statesville. So we bring in several thousand pounds of coffee throughout the world, from different regions, from Africa and South America and Central America, and we 83 Q grade and higher is all we do. And we
really, so you're at the upper end.
Yeah. For an example, Starbucks. Now, Starbucks has the resources. They can do whatever they want to do.
Right.
They do Arabica coffee as well. There's not enough supply in the world to do the top end. They have places throughout Oregon and Washington State that they have specialty stores that do that. Okay. But what happens oftentimes, and I'm going to give kudos to Starbucks. I mean, Schultz, he took an industry that was nothing with stale coffee in grocery stores and really made it into something. But they, there's not a supply in the world for them to be able to do precisely what we do, although they certainly have the resources to do that if they wanted to. Sure. So what happens oftentimes is, in order to maintain consistency throughout the globe, when you're a chain like that, sometimes you have to over roast it in order to get that consistency that you need.
So when you hear people say, Starbucks' secret is they over roaster, maybe for the layman burn their beans. There's a little bit of truth to that.
Well, I don't want to be derogatory to a
No, you're okay.
Starbucks.
Here, I'll tell you what. I'll do it. You burn your beans.
No, I'll put it this way. There's all kinds of things. You could take, say, a Colombian or Brazilian coffee, and maybe you want to make a French roast out of that, which is as you would say, roasted longer than any other coffee, that an espresso. When you have African coffees, a Yirgacheffe, Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, or a Burundi, they have a little more of a flavor, like a Ethiopian coffee will have a natural blueberry tint to it. Maybe you'll have kind of a caramelly, chocolatey flavor in a Burundi coffee. Well, I could French roast that, or I can espresso that as well. But all you're doing is burning away that additional
those
cost
natural kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
does that come from the soil, or is it elevation, atmosphere, soil?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, it's the different regions. Well, just like wines, different regions will have different contents to their coffee, their bean. And, it comes down to roasting as well. I can take any bean and make it into an espresso, or any bean and make it into a French roast. But some beans are just more suitable for that. And I find that beans such as the African beans in particular, you might want to go medium to mild roast on that, so you can get more of the the flavor, the accent, the florals.
Now, have you ever had the opportunity to go meet face to face with some of the growers where you purchase the coffee from?
I have not personally. Now, I have a business partner on another side of the business. There's 7 locations at Sky Mountain.
So you guys have 7 locations?
Well, within corporate centers. Craig Blaney, who started Summit Coffee out of Davison.
Which is most people in Davidson, obviously you know that place. But even people around here, when you go to Davidson, if you go to Flatiron, if you go to Kindred, you got to stop by and get a coffee, right?
Yeah,
that we do. And when we go down there, we check it out.
They do a good job. They have a couple of locations themselves now. They actually have a roastery.
But do they really?
Yeah, they do. It's over on Bailey Road, and Craig started that almost 20 years ago.
Wow,
and
really?
So he's a pharmacist by trade. So we got 2 drug guys into another drug industry.
Well, there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. So Craig started this. He's had a lot more years' experience in the actual coffee industry itself. I brought perhaps more of the capital to the business to be able to scale it out, hopefully, from what we currently have. Part of the business is his, part is mine, some we share. And, that's the way we're working it for now. But,
gosh, that's got to be, just thinking about there's this, there's that, and then we share. Like, how does that work into the tax season?
Yeah, well,
it gets complicated.
Well, you think about McDonald's. McDonald's has a franchise system, and many of them are owned by individuals, and where you have a single brand that other people are basically buying off of.
Have you ever, speaking of McDonald's, I hate to divert, but have you seen the movie with Michael Keaton called The Founder?
I have not.
Dude.
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have. It's a very good movie.
It's a great movie, right? I mean, it really kind of shows you, like...
Doesn't portray him very well,
No, it doesn't. However, if you can get past that, you appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit of him, and how smart was he to, if you want to own a franchise, McDonald's itself, the entity, has to own the ground that you put it on. So they're like one of the largest, not the largest, landowners in the world.
Well, that was his, that's how he took the company, basically.
Sky Mountain Coffee, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be owning the land that you put it on.
Well, I own my building, the roastery, and the other locations of Sky Mountain are within corporate centers, and I don't think I'll ever be owning Lowe's corporate headquarters.
So your other location of Sky Mountain is inside the Lowe's headquarters in Mooresville, right?
Well, there's several. Craig, initially, the global headquarters of Lowe's Corporations in Mooresville, North Carolina. There's 2 within there.
Oh, wow.
There's one in the Wilkesboro office, which was the original corporate office.
Right.
There's one down in Soledad. There's one in Amerisourceburger, which is a drug wholesaling company down in South Carolina, Research Triangle Park. But they're all in corporate centers. I may be opening up 1 or 2 within the Hilton hotels coming up soon. But, right now, I have my hands full. I got a little plan behind all of this. Hopefully, it works out.
Yeah, I hope so.
Of what I want to do.
But it's kind of smart, right? Because speaking of Starbucks, I don't know a ton about them, but I mean they don't pay for advertising. They do very little advertising, if I understand correctly.
It's remarkable.
But what they're smart about is, and I think you're kind of doing it too, is you go into a Target and there's a Starbucks. So if you guys could kind of do the same thing in these corporate buildings or corporate entities, Hiltons or whatnot, you could take a little piece of that pie, right?
I don't want to relinquish too much of how you go about it, because a lot of this is kind of a proprietary, at least.
Yeah,
in
sure.
our
Look,
little world
I'm
of,
just guessing, man. Hey.
It's a good model.
Listen.
In most cases, it can be a very good model. Now, the downside of that is you don't own the building.
True.
And at any time they can say, hey, Andy and Craig, we've had enough, and
right,
we'll take over now. Thanks for building it.
Thanks, we appreciate you.
But it's not the business they're in.
Yeah.
They want someone that produces a good quality, that knows what they're doing.
Sure.
And as long as you do it well and are honest, it can provide a good quality to the.
Well, listen, man. If you put out a shit product, people aren't going to be drinking it. They're not going to be coming there. They're going to be coming to your store. And right from what I see as a consumer, and right now I'm a consumer of your product. Okay, it's good, and people are there taking in your product, because if it was crap, people wouldn't be drinking it. So obviously your product is good. You're doing something right.
There's a lot to be. One of the things I want to point out, when you start off in a cherry, it starts off in a cherry.
So a coffee bean starts in a cherry.
It starts as a cherry, and each cherry bean has 2 coffee beans in it. You go through this crazy process of breaking it down either by water or out in the open, breaking it down by the air and raking it. If you're in Tanzania, the pea berries, the coffee, it's one bean per cherry. And you think about the fact that you have individuals going out there picking berry by berry, and each one of them, in Tanzania, produces 1 bean or 2 beans, and you're going through this crazy process of breaking it down, and then I receive it in 154 pound canvas bags, and once I roast it, I lose 20% of it by evaporating, essentially.
Shrinkage.
And and then it comes over to one of our shops, and by the time it gets over to the shop, you're now grinding it down, you're packing it down to get a cup of coffee.
Damn,
it's a wonder coffee isn't $30 a cup.
And you're a numbers guy. I mean, by you're an accountant, like.
Well,
in your former life, so you know the numbers and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
I'm largely a drug guy.
Well, yeah, but you know numbers. I mean, you're a smart guy. And it's amazing, like, how many cups of coffee you have to sell in order to, break even or, justify what you're doing.
I mean, Statesville's a relatively small town.
Yeah.
It's 1.3 miles off the major intersection. We have no drive-through. You see, any given week, we're still relatively new at the spot, maybe 2,300 people.
What?
And,
okay, that's a number that I'm blown away by, to be honest with you.
You would think when you say a number such as 2,300 that you'd be making a boatload of money.
No.
It just shows you just how many people you must see.
Yeah.
I've heard stats from Starbucks that upwards of 65% of their business is with drive-through.
Oh, for
we
sure.
don't have a drive-through. We're a destination point, and in a relatively small town. So, it's a risk. There's no doubt.
Well, I mean, you have to do things. You have to set yourself apart from other people to bring people in, right? To attract them to come there.
Yeah, it's if you're going to go into a commodity business, you have to differentiate yourself in some way. You have to have some niche, and this is what we're doing. We've created a destination spot with a high quality product, and just hoping that people will see it as such, and over a period of time it becomes well known, because you're not going to just drive past it. It's 1.3 miles off the the interstate.
You're there for a purpose.
Yeah,
it's an intentional.
And the bottom line is, when you get people there, you want them to go back and tell the rest of their family, the rest of their colleagues. You're not going to do it if you've messed up.
That's true.
So you work extra hard to make sure there's a good experience when people come in.
So the roasting thing I find very interesting. So how often are you roasting beans at your facility?
Well, we have some corporate accounts as well.
Oh, you do?
From Hilton Hotel and the Sealed Air and Compass. And,
So you actually lease out your roaster?
no, I don't lease out the roaster. We
You do
it
not?
all ourselves.
Oh.
Now, the core business is the roasting house. We have our our retail spots and the corporate spots, but that's what we want to build. We want to be able to roast for other coffee shops.
You do?
Yeah.
Because let's say that there's a thriving coffee shop in a local metropolis area that's looking for a local place to roast their beans. You would be interested in possibly helping facilitate that at your facility.
Well, I would definitely want to roast their beans. With coffee.
We'll talk after.
Yeah, with coffee.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, when you get those green beans in,
Yeah,
in 154 pound satchels, that is maybe good for a year and a half, 2 years on the shelf. But once you roast the coffee, it starts to age really quick.
really?
Yeah, so once you grind it, it goes really quick. Now you're talking hours.
So what you're saying is so if I understand, and people at home, when you get your beans and if you grind them, it has a shorter shelf life. But if they sat there untouched,
Well, the green beans are good for a long time. Once you roast the beans, once air is the enemy of coffee. Once the air gets to it, it starts to age really quick. Now, once you grind it, it ages super fast.
so each level of basically trauma to the bean.
Exactly.
Or exposure.
Well, exposure to air, essentially.
gotcha.
So when you go to a grocery store and you get beans that have been on the shelf for a month, it's already ground.
Yeah.
Just rest assured, it's not going to be the same product that we're delivering. So the fresher,
Good to know.
The fresher the bean, the better. I mean, so if we're doing it locally, and we're getting it right to your spot, you're going to be able to tell not only from the quality of the bean and the way we roast it, but the fresh coffee means a tremendous amount to the palate. And if you're used to getting it out of a grocery store, you don't even know what I'm talking about.
So and I gotta be honest with you, me every morning, okay. I told this to a colleague of mine at work, and he looked at me like I had three heads. He's younger than I am. He's from a graduate from NYU, super smart guy, super techie. And when I told him I brew Folgers every morning, he looked at me like I was his grandpa. And he was like, "You do what?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, why would you do that? Nobody buys Folgers. And I was like, "Yeah." It was $4.99 at the grocery store. It was buy two, you get one free. So I was like, "Yeah. I just need a cup of coffee to get me from Statesville to Charlotte, and that's it."
You know what? I'll get this. We talk a lot about millennials and not having the best habits with work and whatnot. The one thing about them, when it comes to the latest tech products or good quality coffee products, they're actually pretty attuned as to.
Sure. Well, he taught me something, you know.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, he's buying a Starbucks bean that's been on the shelf for who knows how long. So he may be, for what he's spending on that grounded bean, he may be getting ripped off.
And if you lock it, if it's sealed in, you're going to get more in your 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
But once air hits it, it's going to age even at that. But once air hits it, it really ages. But you're going to tell a tremendous difference in a quality bean that was roasted 3 days ago or 2 days ago versus something that's been sitting on the shelf for a month. There's no doubt.
You know what I want to do? Let's say that time and money was no object. You know what I want to do, Julius?
What do you gotta do?
I want Andy and I. We're gonna film a documentary, and we're gonna leave Statesville, and we're gonna travel to one of the places where you purchase beans, and we're going to document going all the way from Statesville to the bean farmer, getting it, okay, bringing it back, going to the roaster, and follow the process, and then bagging it, and then us sharing a cup of coffee. That's what we're going to do.
Well, I tell you what, some of these areas, some of these regions, I'm not sure you want to go to.
You live once, Andy.
Go to El Salvador or Honduras.
Are the coffee fields right beside the poppy field?
Maybe. But you only live once. I mean, we've got to tell a story, right?
And you may only live when you go to some of these areas. Like some of these regions, it's just amazing they're able to get products out. The war-torn. I mean, look at you had a genocide that was taking place in Rwanda.
All
They're
right.
still getting the beans out. I mean, it's
Isn't that crazy?
yeah.
Don't shelve the project just yet. Okay, we're going to do it.
I tell you what, you go there, make the documentary, and bring it back, and I'll tell you what I
Nah,
think.
man, I need you. You're the coffee guy. They can't look at me and go, "Oh, you're the radio dude. You suck." I need the guy
Maybe we
who's
get
writing the
Juan
check.
Valdez as a guest on the show.
Maybe he might call in.
Hey, actually, Craig has been down to Columbia.
Oh, really?
We do some direct purchasing from the States, and there's others that we go to Royal Cup. Most of it comes in through Royal Cup, but some of it is direct to the source, and others is, just in the sea market. But it is high quality beans.
So what made you decide that probably the best thing for you guys to do is to roast the beans locally as opposed to getting it from another roaster? Or
It's my interest to begin with. I love the manufacturing process. You put a lot of money into the machinery. I spent, some people would think, for what we currently do, an absurd amount of money for these roasters. They're not cheap. Software alone on them are $24,000, and cost me $17,000 to hook it up.
Wait a minute. Whoa. So you have 24,000 in software, 17,000.
I have 17,000
in hooking it up,
and hooking up the machines for the ventilation systems.
That's 41,000. I'm not good at math.
We haven't gotten to the machine yet, so yeah, it's an expensive process, and but my cost of goods sold on a product, and for you, if you were purchasing from me, it's going to be a lot less than going and essentially purchasing from someone else, and hoping that they deliver the right product, and they always have it on time and what I want.
Yeah.
So I can control the whole process, and that's what I want.
That makes sense. It's what is it? Short-term pain for hopefully long-term gain.
Well, hopefully the long-term gain will be there.
That's right.
I worked with a fairly high-profile Silicon Valley company for 14 and a half years, and my colleagues, who of a typical Goldman Sachs type mentality in the Valley, they see everything in a monetary sense, and they think I'm absolutely wasting my career here, and they've often joked about doing an intervention with me to get me back to the real world here. But I love coffee, something I love doing. We're going to make this work, and hopefully we can be accepted in Statesville, and other people out there will say, hey, look, Sky Mountain is a product I'd like to have, and it's going to be fresh, it's going to be good quality, and let's go with them.
I think with the revamping of the downtown area, they've done such a good job, and I think also with the breweries, the two that are in town, that are drawing people from outside of the city limits, Mooresville and surrounding areas, to come in here. I think they're finding you, I'm sure of it, and they know that you're here, which is a good thing, and we need that. And we need the more foot traffic and out of town to help support all the other things that are growing and hopefully that are going to be coming here. But you said you love coffee. Have you always wanted to be a coffeepreneur, or was it something that you were like?
I'm an entrepreneur in my heart.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When you're with a large, big pharma companies such as GlaxoSmithKline, you get into a bureaucracy of a IBM type environment.
I don't want to interrupt you for a second. For a lot of people listening, they're not going to know what GlaxoSmithKline is.
Well, GlaxoSmithKline is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world.
So they may make certain drugs that their family takes, like an aspirin, or
Well, if they've ever had a migraine, the sumatriptans were the first one. If they've ever gone through chemotherapy, and the anti-nausea drug Zofran, that's one. The drug Zantac is a drug that they developed. If you're with Gilead Sciences, we developed a drug called Tamiflu. We farmed it off to Roche. We have roughly 70% of the world's market of HIV drugs.
Wow.
Cure for hepatitis C. So, yeah.
See, that gives a bit of a reference for the folks listening at home. They're like, he just rattled off something. What's that?
But the thing about it is you start off in these big pharma companies, and if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you get to the point you really dislike that environment, the corporate political environment. So if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, you try to hook up with a biotech company, knowing it's high risk, but it's a nice startup.
Yeah.
But if the startup's successful, you become the monster you left again. It becomes
Right.
this big company once again. So I left Gilead right at the peak of its success, and I went into private equity for about 2 years, and did absolutely nothing for about a year and a half. Just I
Time
traveled.
off.
I traveled with the kids, and I went to London, Europe, Isle of Man, and my wife. We had kids a little bit later in life. I have twin 13, almost 14-year-olds,
Yeah, we have that in
and
common.
we sit down one evening and says, first of all, it's amazing how quick you can go through your principal when you're not working. And also, it's probably not a good idea for kids to see that dads don't work. So,
That's
so I did something absolutely insane and bought a coffee company. So,
in Statesville of all
yeah.
places.
So if we can figure out a way to monetize this and actually make money one day, it would be wonderful. So,
But did you tell me? Is that right? We were talking earlier. Like you got married in the castle. Is that right?
yeah, my wife's a Swiss citizen.
Yeah.
She grew up in the Far East, but she's Swiss, and I was married in Rapperswil. And Rapperswil is right on Lake Zurich, 40 miles north. Actually, they're there right now, coming in back on their flight to go out tomorrow evening. I picked them up. So I was married in a chapel in a castle that's from the 1200s. That's right on Lake Zurich. Yeah,
That's
kind
pretty
of
awesome.
an unusual. Unusual wedding, I guess.
What, now, I'm imagine their weddings are different than ours. Maybe a bit more traditional or formal. Like, did you have to sign a log or a book?
Well. To begin with, it was the ceremony was done in German, so it'd be a little bit different from a statesville wedding, I would imagine. But
Yeah.
and yeah, it's you have a civil ceremony before you have the Christian
Yeah.
church ceremony the following day. That's by law. And you're in Switzerland. A lot of mountains, a lot of Alps, and the environment's a little bit different.
I can only imagine that the scenery and the backdrop that they had, as far as like the wedding pictures. Sorry, babe. Foxton had to do. We did what we could, sugar. So when you told, what was it like when you told your wife and your family, like, we've taken a year and a half off. It's been a little bit of capital. We've seen the world. We've had some fun
It's not
stuff.
that we saw the world. I don't want to act like a billion
Well,
here.
no. Well, you've seen some stuff. You've taken some time off. You've had a little bit of time to enjoy some of the fruits of your labor. You're like, you know what? I'm going to start a coffee shop. What was that like when you had that
It
conversation?
wasn't originally a coffee shop, and to begin with, you're with a company that I had 120 legs a year I was flying, and I had small kids and all. And there was a time in which my wife was also working with the company. We were both flying.
So you both are on an airline, going back and forth.
Not the last several years. My wife
Yeah.
quit way before that when she had the kids.
But at one point,
At one point, you had nannies raising your kids, and you asked the question, do you want to be parents or do you want to raise your own kids? So she quit, and then I got to a point I became very fed up with not only the company, but always flying and not seeing my kids as much as I want. And so I just quit, and which is not exactly what my wife wanted me to do at that point. But there's a whole different process. I had other little options. I was doing a little consulting with Biotech, a consulting company out of San Diego, and shortly thereafter, I worked with a private equity company for a couple of years, and I had an office in Nashville, but always lived here, and I just flew everywhere. Now I thought I would be giving myself a time off, but I actually spend far more time now than I did in the corporate world. So you gotta kind of watch how there's a lot of things I would change if I went back, at least the manner in which I did it. And it's my wife's incredibly supportive. She's almost weird in that regard. She's not as concerned about money.
yeah.
I didn't grow up in the same environment she grew up in, and I'm always concerned about the future.
Sure.
In that regard, and but she was incredibly supportive. Whatever I wanted to do.
Well, what's the saying, and I think it's true, behind every strong man's a stronger woman. You couldn't do what you wanted to do. I couldn't be here tonight, Julius. You couldn't be here if we didn't have women at home that were taking care of the kids right now or doing whatever, who didn't support us and let us come out here and do a podcast or start a business. Each one of us has our own business that we're trying to help grow, and we all have an entrepreneurial spirit. But we would not be able to explore that part of ourselves without a good support system at home.
Well, I mean, you're married. Hopefully, you spend the rest of your life with someone. You better choose the right one. And I certainly married up. It didn't take a lot to marry up, but but I married up. And she's incredibly bright. Susan started off. I mean, she was investment banking in Switzerland, and she came back. She went into pharmaceuticals as well, and we were the first ever husband and wife team at Gilead Sciences.
Really?
At its peak, was a $163 billion company. Now it's around 90, I guess. But we were the first ever husband and wife team at
Congratulations,
that
sir.
Yeah.
You actually have a plaque.
Yeah, spending 14 and a half years at Gilead, I deserve something, that's for sure. That's a whole nother podcast for you. But, in the Valley, the average corporate tenure now is something like 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
In the Valley, it's got to be a lot less than that because people move
Really?
around a lot more. And I was there 14 and a half years. I was an absolute dinosaur in a Silicon Valley type.
You're like, what is it, Job or Moses or something?
Yeah.
There, man.
It's
You should have a wing
Well,
named after you.
there's spending 14 and a half years with that company. You deserve something, maybe a Purple Heart.
So let me ask you something. Could you describe what it's like? Because people around here and even myself have no concept. I mean, I've met a lot of people and I've worked for people who come from that environment in Silicon Valley and working from other medical companies like Varian and other stuff like that. But what is it like to live, in that environment, that stress-induced, produced environment? What's it like?
Well, it's my father and my mother. My mother worked for the federal government her whole career. My father worked for the state his whole career. You can't even explain it to them. It's just so different. I mean, the whole notion of there's no retirement. There is no retirement.
Really?
Well,
I would assume there was.
Yeah, I mean, you have a 401, you have stock options. When you go to most of these companies, in particular when we started, we didn't get paid much at all. It was all riding on stock. Stock on that from a statistical standpoint, probably never going to be worth anything. So it's, it is produce or go. Yeah. Roughly 10% of people are let go every year. It's just the way it is. You produce or you're gone. So there is stress there. You get on the plane and you're preparing for the meeting you're going to have there, and it's not unusual that you land in Chicago and they say, "Can we postpone this to Wednesday?" Well, I'm already here. So, but you're constantly scrambling. It's you do live in
It's a pressure cooker.
It is. It really is. But at the same time, you're paid. You're paid more in a state job. You're paid more in a federal job. But the notion that you're just simply paid, well, you're doing something for it as well. And your job is not secure. And I think if you work for the government, in most cases, your job is pretty secure.
Yeah.
And you do have a retirement. You never had a retirement. So you can look at that, and you know this from your line of work. You can look at that and say, well, Randy makes X, Y, and I only make this. Well, you're taking risk, and you're not.
Absolutely.
So, and that's the way life is, and there's no guarantees. There's certainly no guarantee into going into a commodity space the way we're in, trying to get a piece of a very large market where economies of scale generally win out. So, I hope for the best. Statistically, it's not on our side.
Right.
but we're still there. We're going to do it.
So, did you guys live in California?
No. I traveled every week.
Really? So you guys live in Davidson,
Now we
and then
didn't.
you traveled.
No, we didn't necessarily travel to California. That was just
Okay.
a home office. But
I
I was
gotcha.
traveling largely up and down the East Coast, from Chicago to a lot of working. I was in charge of a relatively small group, where the Department of Defense managed markets. At one point, we were heading up Indian Affairs, which is an interesting market. And I was, me and a gentleman by the name of Clifford Samuels, which is still with the company, is a senior vice president with them now. We were good friends from Glock, we started a division called Corrections, which is prisons and jails for the U.S. So I was spent a large portion of my life inside prisons and jails.
Did you really?
There's a lot of viruses inside prisons and jails.
100%.
You've got probably it's something like 12 to 15% of all inmates are hepatitis C positive.
You know, honestly, 12 to 15%, that sounds like a low number, because I believe we have an incarceration rate of about 3 million in the U.S.
It's 2.4 million in the U.S., 7 million that funnel through the system continuously through the probationary system. At any given time, 2.4 million. You have federal prisons, then you have state prisons, you have the private entities, and then you have, the county and local jails.
So roughly 400,000 have, like...
No, that's hepatitis C.
Yeah.
HIV is a whole different. We were largely we had the cures for hepatitis C, but for most of the time I was there, we were spending most of our time within the HIV market.
So what's the HIV rate in prison?
It's right a little over 10 times that of the general population. During I think one stat is it's almost 20% of the entire HIV market.
All right, so let's do.
Will at one time funnel through that system.
All right, so if there's, let's just call it simple math, 2.5 million, 10% is 250,000, 20%.
So it's not 10%; it's 10 times the general population.
10 times the general population.
Yeah, it's a little over 1% of the active population. In some areas, as much as 3% that will have HIV. But if you look at America as a whole, we have 1 million patients only. You would think there's millions and millions. There's millions, roughly 700,000 are being treated. There's 34 million. No. There's almost 40 million HIV patients, and there's a difference between HIV and AIDS. One is more than 200 CD. Viral. Once your CD4 count goes below 200, you're considered AIDS.
So the threshold's 200.
200. And if you've ever been there and go back above 200, you're still an AIDS patient. But it's 40. The vast majority, 34 million of the 40 million people in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa. So as far as from a statistical standpoint, we only have roughly 1 million people in the U.S. out of 320 million people. But prisons have 10 times the general rate.
Damn. How's that for a stat? And people thought we were just going to talk about coffee.
Yeah. How do we get on this?
But that's the point, man. We're here. We're learning about different stuff, man. Everybody brings something unique and different to the table. And these are statistics that people just generally don't think about or know about. And the fact that you were in a sector of the population that is either not thought about or forgotten about. Because when we talk about people today with disabilities and diseases and lack of access or whatnot, people forget about the prison system.
Talking about forgetting about it, there was 4 individuals within Gilead Sciences that largely our little department with Clifford Samuels was to go out and find new markets for Gilead. Originally, they didn't really think twice about prisons. And I remember in the very early days going back, and you do a presentation, you pitch a concept to market, and maybe they'll give you resources to hire a group of people and go in there and try to work it. We would work it originally. And if it has legs, you end up hiring more and more people, and it becomes its own division. Some you nix, and some you continue with. But in the early days, we came back, well, what's in prisons? What? They got doctors there? No, it's like a country within itself, really.
Right.
And every state is different. And every state is different. Every private entity is different. The formulators are different. Federal is perhaps more centrally located out of D.C. and has more of a scope throughout the country of a single management. But States are entirely different. And then when you get down to the lower level of jails where the sheriff has control, a lot less knowledge in those areas. But in those cases, counties and sheriffs, are all shots. So yeah, it's a very political system too. Incredibly political. But then again, so is Department of Defense and the VA, which we are also in charge of.
It's interesting. A friend of mine, he has spent some time in the federal prison system, and he had an interesting story. I would love for him to come on the show and share some stuff, but he had mentioned that he was up in Beckley, West Virginia, and he was in there with
Actually been there.
You've been there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Actually, I had a guest on, Charlie Engle, who's a best-selling author, and Matt Damon produced a documentary about him, but he spent 18 months in Beckley, West Virginia. He was the first person at the time to ever he didn't go to jail, but he was the first one to be ever prosecuted for falsifying a home loan. That's an interesting podcast. You should definitely take a listen to that.
Well, by the way, Martha Stewart was in Anderson prison, not too far from you.
Really?
Yeah.
Small world. But this other friend of mine was telling me that he was in there incarcerated with someone whose family owned a major, well-known, I'm not going to say, but optical lens company throughout the country. And he saw a need in the prison system that these guys had the wrong lenses. And so what he would do is when he would find out what these guys needed as far as a prescription, and he would have tell the wife. So when she would come visit him, she would be wearing the glasses, and she would give him the glasses, and then he would then go give the glasses to Andy. So every visit she made, he was getting these eyeglasses from her, and they were giving the inmates proper glasses that they needed for reading and X, Y, and Z.
I'm surprised they even allowed that.
Well, they weren't necessarily paying attention because, he too wore glasses. But they're sitting there talking, they're sitting there talking, and she's wearing the glasses. They put the glasses down. He puts the glasses on. Maybe they traded out. I'm not sure what it was. But it was just a simple trade of the eyeglasses. So the inmates now were getting the proper prescriptions that they needed so they could read and see far, near, and all that kind of stuff.
Some of the systems are quite good, and some of them are quite poor. I mean, HIV is one of those markets that you really got to know what you're doing. It's simply being a physician. A general practitioner, family practitioner, don't have a clue as to how to treat this. With HIV, you got to have three drugs on board, at least two separate classes, a couple of nucleosides, a protease inhibitor, boosted protease inhibitor, two nukes and a non-nuke, or two nukes and an integrase inhibitor. And if you don't have enough pressure on the virus to get it under 400 copies, you're actually better off not to be taking the drug at all, because you develop resistant mutations to the drug you have on board.
Yeah.
So when you get individuals that don't know what they're doing, we saw this so often. You're doing far more harm than good, because once you develop resistant mutations, you have a non-nuke, you get a 103, you've wiped out the entire class. And so it's really important that, and actually North Carolina is a pretty good system. UNC Chapel Hill takes care of almost all of these patients. They have a few physicians that are very good to go into the system, and they know what they're doing. Some of these areas, they really don't.
I was going to ask you, for those immunocompromised patients, are there certain states or academic centers that you're like, these guys are very good?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, I mean, North Carolina's a very good one.
UNC Chapel Hill?
Yeah. I mean, South Carolina, they essentially isolated everyone into one facility called Broad River. And you had one guy by the name of Glenn Allerline that treated 100% of them.
Oh, wow.
And he knew what he was doing. So this concept of, and they got a big hoopla at one point of, oh, that's horrible, you're isolating HIV. Well, they better be thankful, because they get put in other facilities where they get, Dr. Bug Tussle or whatever, and he gives it the old college try, and you've screwed him up for life. Yeah. And it's one of those disease states that, a lot like oncology. I mean, you could screw up on someone's statin or SSRI.
Sure.
You're going to be okay. You mess up on this, you've limited your options for life. And so a lot of what we do is educating those individuals that didn't have a clue that if nothing else, don't treat. Let us get someone that can help you.
But don't you think a lot of physicians who, unfortunately, they feel the pressure or the need to give an answer and to do something, and there's, I don't want to say it's ego, but they're eager to help, so to speak, so they don't necessarily refer.
No, it's ego too. It really is.
He's being much nicer than I am.
No, it's ego. Look, you've been involved in the medical space, and physicians. And what I find so odd, and I can't believe we're getting into all this, but now I've left the industry, I can be a little more free in what I say.
Sure.
You'll find that the key thought leaders in the U.S. for disease states such as HIV, and John Bartlett, or Glenn Halliwell, or Joe Egon, or David Wall at UNC, they know what to do. You know what? They don't have the ego.
Yeah.
When you get these physicians, these local rural family practitioners that they're perhaps the only one in that area that has a college degree, much less medical school, they start to get a little bit of a God syndrome. Some of them, not all, of course, but
sure.
They're the dangerous ones. They really are, and it's just some disease state shit. And when you're in a prison, what do? That's your option. You don't have another option.
That's right. So, you're at their mercy, so to speak.
Yeah, and you just hope you're in the right. You're incarcerated the right period. If you have a disease state, oncology or HIV, make sure you do the crime in the right state.
Well, let me tell you something. Speaking of doing the crime in the right state, I never want to get arrested in Durham, North Carolina, because if you watch The Staircase and what happened to the Duke lacrosse team, don't want to do that. And then if you watch Making a Murderer, and what is Wichita, Wassaisaw County in Milwaukee?
It's Manawaka.
Manawaka. Never.
I've been to that town before.
You been there? Well, my friend, you are lucky. You're lucky because you going to jail. They gonna get your ass, and you going to jail. So those are the two places that Brandon never. I'm here. I'm going to get in and get out. And don't even talk to me. I don't want to mess up.
It's funny you mentioned it. The Ross case. That DA is now without a law license.
What's his name? It's not Knife On. It is Knife On.
But you know what? The lady who accused them is now in prison. She killed her boyfriend.
That is correct.
So, if you want to look at things and really draw it out, if people would have done their job, perhaps that person would be dead today. It's because
it's a ripple effect.
I think anyone that goes out and accuses people of something that didn't happen, which we now know was the case, they should be prosecuted as well. You shouldn't get a free pass. And by her getting a free pass, we have a dead person today. So
that's a good point.
The press sensationalized it so much. They basically had them guys convicted before it even went to court.
I haven't watched it, but I'm pretty sure there's an ESPN 30 for 30 on that.
Yeah,
yeah.
I've never seen it either.
No, I've meant to watch it. I actually had it DVR'd, but now that I should probably find it somewhere. But now that I'm with Limitless Streams and James Ferry, plug. I'll have to go see if I can find that somewhere.
I got a coffee question.
Yeah, fire away, please.
I mean, it might be ridiculous. I don't know, but I've always been curious about the decaffeinating coffee process. I didn't know.
That was my question.
Did you have a question?
I did about decaf.
Well, you go ahead.
No. You.
Why not? I'm just curious. Is it real? And how do you do that?
Well.
And do you do that as part of the roasting process, or does the green bean come in with no caffeine?
Royal Cup kind of sources and takes care of a lot of that. It's done through a chemical process in most cases. Ours is done with a water process, so it's a lot more natural. But it's a process that takes place before we actually roast it. Yeah.
Okay, so it comes to you that way.
So it is real. They really take the caffeine out.
I've
heard different things where not all of it comes out, but it reduces a little bit.
You still get a little bit of caffeine, but it's by the time it gets to us,
is it profitable for you? Do you sell what percentage of your sales is?
if you're
caffeinated.
in a corporate setting, it's a lot higher. Here in Statesville, very little decaf
Statesville
is
loves
sold.
their caffeine.
They love their caffeine. You know what's odd about Statesville as well? In the corporate center, there's a lot of the fat-free milk is used in the lattes and the cappuccinos.
No, this is dairy country here, buddy.
They want whole milk.
We want it
They
straight out
want
of the cow.
whole milk, buddy.
Don't bother with that pasteurization and stuff. Just,
Yeah, well, maybe any given week, maybe I'll in the Statesville location, maybe I'll have 40 or 50 gallons of whole milk and maybe 4 gallons of skim milk.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What do they call that? They have the fancy words when they order the coffee with skim milk, but there's a term for it, isn't it? Light or
I don't know. Low fat,
skinny.
no
They
whip.
call it skinny.
Skinny. There you go.
Yeah.
See? We're learning.
Statesville's not interested in the skinny part of things.
No, they don't want
the whole
skinny.
You want the full flavor, buddy.
They want the full flavor.
That's right.
No shortcuts here.
Yeah, let's go to the Walmart. You see.
Well, I mean, hey, we like what we like, man.
Yeah, man.
We do an awful lot of the soy milk and oat milk and almond milk.
Almond milk,
Now,
yeah.
surprisingly, Statesville orders quite a bit of that as well.
Really. I've tried oat milk one time, and it was very flavorful. I liked it.
Well, it's expensive. I hope it tastes well. So,
I've done the almond milk before, but it's not really milk. It's
we
they call it
do-
milk, but they say it's not really.
We do almond milk at home, but yeah. I mean, I'm not a dairy person. I don't drink it. I rarely eat it.
I love milk.
Nope. Now, my father-in-law goes to like 2-3 gallons of milk a week, and that's whole milk. And
So you don't do the protein shakes before you work out?
I used to, but now I've really went more to a kind of a meat, egg. I'm trying to source my protein more
Natural
naturally,
protein, yeah.
as opposed to. But I mean, I still buy protein, and I'm not opposed to doing it by any means, and I've done it Lord knows for years.
We do
Rather
a
have a
fair
steak
amount of
and eggs.
smoothies, and they add the wheat protein to the smoothies. We sell quite a bit of that. Coffee is big in the morning. Once you hit the afternoon, it kind of turns into a cold drink.
Really?
A lot of smoothies.
My
a lot of
daughters
milkshakes.
love the milkshakes and smoothies there.
Yeah.
So
Here's something interesting that I enjoy. Like tonight, I'm having several beverages here, but the other night at home, I was doing some work, and I was having a bourbon, a water, and a coffee. And I've been to your establishment, and I've had a beer and a coffee, and I enjoy the back and forth. I mean, I'm an odd little man. If you haven't figured this out by now, so I'm a little different. But there's something about the cold, the caffeine. I don't know. I enjoy it. I drink probably more than at minimum of a half a pot of coffee a day anyway. Between home, work, and there's nothing for me to go home or be at home at 9, 10 o'clock, and I'll make 2 cups of coffee, and I'll drink it, and I have no trouble going to sleep.
You are the absolute perfect customer. Love it. Yeah.
gotta keep
coffee
away from
and-
that Folgers.
Coffee and beer. I love it.
Coffee and beer. So, Andy, tell everybody at home where they can find Sky Mountain Coffee in Statesville.
Okay, it's on 110 West Broad Street, dead center downtown.
Okay.
And it's a 3-story building. The third story is 3,000 square feet in my office, but the other 2 stories are for customers. So right dead downtown. It's just up from Mitchell College and about 2 doors up from Delaney's.
And how can they find you? Do you have any social media presence?
We have a website, of course, but we're all on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
All the major.
You can order it online as well.
You can order your coffee
Yeah,
online?
certainly,
Okay. Is there a website?
Yeah.
What's the name of your website?
Well, just put in Sky Mountain Coffee. It will come up.
It will come up. Okay. And
Yeah.
they can find you on Twitter, Facebook, on Sky Mountain Coffee?
Right. Sky Mountain Coffee. If you're looking for Statesville, just go for the one that says Statesville, but the others will be listed as well.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming onto the show. I appreciate you bringing your entrepreneurial spirit and your coffee shop to Statesville. And I enjoy your coffee, and I hope this helps spread the word out and more people come visit your place and get a cup of coffee
appreciate you
and drink a
having
couple beers too.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Also, I would like to thank some of our show supporters. Thank you to States Vegas Radio. Thank you to States Vegas Clothing Company. You can look those guys up on Facebook for providing me with all of my gear this year. Also, thank you to Kasey.tate at Farm Bureau Insurance, Dustin McCrary Law, And to our brand new sponsor, thank you to Black Flag Holster Company. If you guys need a new concealed carry holster, check those guys out. And we have brand new T-shirts for Appetite for Discussion on the website. Ooh, what? Yeah, that's right. Check them out. So thank you guys, and we will talk to you soon. Listen, laugh, and learn. Thanks.